My name is Daniel KIbblesmith. I am 27 years old. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I am a humor writer for Groupon.
Daniel KIbblesmith. Not the hero we needed, but certainly the one we deserved. How an awkward comedy writer found his way destroying canon and pop culture. It's a horror story.
Ladies and gentlemen, hiss and foes, welcome to the Culture Casino!
Born in October 1983, Daniel was only 6 or 7 when the New Warriors made their first appearance in comic books as sub-characters in a Thor, or Mighty Thor, I think. Their first real run as a vigilante team, and that was a set, in Volume 1, that was a set of 75 books, and I think an annual and maybe 4 other specials. But it wasn't very many books, but it was a decent run. The subsequent volumes in that were much smaller and much less successful, and they had a brief appearance, kind of a swan song that was leading into Civil War. So in paraphrasing Daniel's own words, these characters were too cool and intimidating for him. So, of course, years later, he was hired to write them for a new generation. Having very little experience in the industry, save for his abruptly canceled 5-issue Loki and his equally short run with Black Panther versus Deadpool, and a questionable period of time with Lockjaw. So very limited experience in this medium. He was entrusted with, more Marvel properties, including this one that we're about to see in New Warriors. And he's doing that all while he's still maintaining his writer status with the Stephen Colbert Show. Easy for me to say. But where did he actually come from? Was he really considered to be one of the top 41 most eligible bachelors by Elle magazine? And what about this book about a gay black Santa? Well, Daniel KIbblesmith answered an ad on Craigslist for a comedy writing position at Groupon. And he caught their eye with his application, which was kind of funny, I guess. It contained some sketches and some quips. And so they hired him as one of the very first employees, or one of the first 50 employees, I should say. And of course, his wealth grew exponentially when they had their IPO as a company. And a year after the founder and CEO was ousted from the company, Daniel left as well, about a year later. And since there are apparently some NDAs associated with all of his time at Groupon, we can't say anything regarding his departure because we don't know why. But anyway, even without knowing the circumstances there, he did move on. And he did make the fatefully awkward appearance on the reality show A Millionaire Matchmaker, which everybody's now familiar with. That we will dive into another couple of segments in just a minute or so. But the cringe and the discomfort there and the awkwardness, oh boy, they are palpable. They're very extraordinary. And he did actually make it onto Elle's list of most eligible bachelors prior to meeting his now spouse. In fact, here's the profile that they posted. And then, of course, there's Santa's husband. It is a tearing down of an institution in the name of agenda. And some of the things that KIbblesmith has said in interviews kind of sheds a light on his misunderstandings for many of the audiences that he writes for, and basically describes his thought process in inserting a political agenda or politically correct agenda into the things that he produces. In fact, in an interview with Comics Beat, we're going to lay that out real quick, Daniel gave us some troubling statements. So, from the actual interview. So, I think about who is reading it and what their reading level is. And in the case of Marvel, how do they most likely know the character? Loki, I would say 2/3 of people picking it up probably mostly experienced Loki mostly through the movies. And then the remaining third, probably through Jason Aaron comics at the moment. And then there's obviously a demographic of people who read old comic books. They read the Jack Kirby Thor and the Walt Simonson Thor. It's a lot of synthesizing it all into your Omni take on the character. But definitely, if you looked at it like a pie chart, our Loki would be weighted towards the movie Loki, because that's what the reader needs from it. So it's the same deal with a children's book. It's just like, who's going to read this, and how does their brain work? And let's give them something that fits. Well, yeah. I mean, who is this for? That's the first question you should ask anytime you produce something. He obviously thinks about that, which is kind of scary, because he's now analyzing how their brains work so that he can best distribute information into their heads, and then let's give them something that fits, so that, that they can consume it. So, and I don't have any problems with consumption. I mean, that's the very reason that companies exist, is to produce things and make money, and boy, there's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, further from the article. And then I think the trick is keeping the reader in mind. Like, I have to think about, if this is my first Loki comic, maybe I have read some Thor, or maybe I knew about some of the kid Loki stuff, but I didn't have all of it. I just tried to think of the version of me that is reading this. I have been different levels of caught up on comics in my life. I've gone away from and come back. They make it pretty easy. The medium has historically been something that gets really bogged down in continuity and can be impenetrable. I think in more recent years it's become something where the new default is a lot of jumping on points, a lot of relaunches and number ones. Living within those are Easter eggs and callbacks that are very satisfying to the people who will get the references. So I'm embracing that model for the most part. Not really, but okay, dude. And finally, I'm going to read this entire thing because it's pertinent. Actually, I'm going to read most of this. So our feeling was that there were a lot of parents who were trying to raise children, especially daughters, outside of stereotypical gender pressures. And what I found working at bookstores and libraries was that you could have a household that's like, my daughter wears overalls, we only buy her Lego and science kits and dump trucks. And somehow she decided that she's a fairy princess. It's almost like a backlash to the backlash. No, it's like you don't understand how kids are wired, or human beings are, but anyway. Rather than reduce kids to childhoods where you're really aiming to have no stereotypical gender roles enter the play space, expect the inevitability of these things being enticing. Maybe you go to a friend's house, or you go to a costume parade or something at school, and you see fairy princesses everywhere. And it's fun. Fairy princesses are beautiful. They get to wear dresses and have wings, and a lot of little kids want to be those, even if their parents are trying very hard to keep everything neutral. It's going to happen. Yeah, no kidding. This guy... So our feeling, as with a lot of writing I do of archetypes or existing characters, is that it's about synthesis. It's about accepting that little kids go through a lot of phases. They contain multitudes. They can rapidly oscillate between the two things. And when I think about the kind of little girl that my wife was, and the kind of child that we are likely to have, it's a princess dinosaur. Or a dinosaur princess. Yeah, it is somebody who will, in a tutu, throw a plate on the ground. Yeah, I don't know what any of that ending part meant, other than I know he's writing another book, or has produced another book that's about to be, or is being released, or has been released, depending upon when you're watching this, called Dinosaur Princess. I'm sure that's going to be just epic, like Santa's husband. Anyway, so... maybe it isn't a surprise that we ended up with Safe Word and Power Bottom. I mean, Safe Space and Snowflake. The agenda is built into the people being hired at these formerly great properties. They can't help themselves to force indoctrinate others, whether it's by an overt means or by manipulation. And since they've failed regularly at most of the overt methods, now they are quietly brainwashing and repurposing pop culture to aid that along. But I guess that's enough of that, and I promised you some more cringe. So here's one scene that that really is funny. This is the first time that Daniel is introduced to the prince, that is actually royalty, that is actually on the same show with him. Let's take a look.
So this will be fun.
I'm really excited. Can I ask you some questions about being a prince?
Yeah, sure.
I don't even know where to begin. Do you have a horse?
Do you have a horse? That's the most pressing question here. Or were you just thinking of what the princely member might be?
A horse?
Yeah.
No. It's all very modern, so it's a regular life. It's just a lot of history. Yeah. So it's a mix of both worlds.
He is actually looking at him with desire. There's no doubt about that. He's longingly looking at this prince and thinking, hey, this might be the way to go. In fact, he almost looked as interested as he might have been in the hairdresser from the beginning of this episode. But of course, I haven't showed anybody that clip yet. We'll get to that another day.
Finding out that Max was a prince was kind of mind-blowing. He was already maybe the coolest guy I'd ever met, and then to find out he was a fairy tale character was a really big deal.
Dude. He is far more interested in this guy than any of the women that he's about to meet. Anyway, I have way more of these cuts. I'm definitely going to do one final video on this fella. He's certain to pop off at some point. He's apparently great friends with Dana Schwartz, so via Twitter and other means they communicate regularly. But anyway, thanks for joining today. I'm glad you're here. Let me just say, make sure you stay healthy, stay safe. Thank you for spending your time here today. Wash your hands, of course. Social distance, stay healthy, blah, 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 blah. I just want all of you to be around for a long time. And with that being said, until next time, bye. Thanks for visiting today. Be sure you're subscribed and hit that for alerts.
Yay!
Of course, like and share all of the videos that you can, as it helps with the algorithm. Have a great day.